Welcome to the Creative Force Podcast, a podcast all about empowering you to live in your God-given identity and go after the dreams in your heart. I'm your host, Sharon Stark, and every week we'll be having powerful conversations that will combine practical and biblical wisdom for living your purpose. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to the Creative Force Podcast. Today is a unique episode because today it is only me. And I'm going to be talking about something very practical, and that is how to form an LLC. Now, this is something that I've had a lot of people ask me questions about how to start their business, and I thought, just why not record a podcast episode about it? If you don't know what an LLC stands for, it stands for a limited liability company, and it is a legal entity that many solopreneurs choose to start their business. If you're ready to turn your passion into a business, keep listening because I'm going to take you step by step through the process on how to form an LLC and launch your business. I started my LLC back in 2019, and I definitely had someone helping me at the time. And I am so grateful for that because on my own, it just seemed really confusing and difficult, but in reality, it's actually pretty simple once you know the right steps to do. So I hope this episode, it gives you the confidence to just move forward and start your business. I do want to say to begin this that I am not an attorney or a CPA, so everything that I'm sharing here, it is for informational purposes, and you are personally choosing to take this information at your own risk. I also want to mention that I am located in Colorado, so everything that I'm going to share at a state level is from that perspective, and it could be different in your state. Okay, let's get into it. So the very first thing you are going to want to do before filing any paperwork is you're going to want to know what type of business structure you're wanting to set up. So regardless of your state, you can set up a corporation, a partnership, or an LLC. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the details on the different types of business structures, but I do recommend that you do your own research on this subject. Most solopreneurs, they choose to operate as an LLC, and that is what I'm going to cover in this episode. So as I mentioned, an LLC, it stands for a limited liability company, and there's many advantages to setting up an LLC for yourself. If you're already making money working for yourself, then legally the government, they recognize you as a sole proprietorship, but this offers you no liability protection. So one of the top advantages of forming an LLC is that it offers you liability protection. This means that your personal assets like your house, your car, they're all protected from creditors or people who would try to sue your business. An LLC is considered a separate legal entity from you, the owner, and that is a really great benefit. A second great reason to form an LLC, I think, is because it legitimizes you. So perhaps you have been doing this hobby or this passion for a while as a way to get side income, and I did that too, but I think actually forming an LLC, it kind of does this mindset shift where you're turning it from a hobby to an actual business that you're going to make profit at. So I think it helps you to not only seem legitimate to people who are wanting to work with you, but I think in your mind, it also is a shift where it's legitimizing you and the way that you're approaching your business. And LLCs also offer tax advantages. I recommend you discuss this with your accountant to learn more. I'm actually going to have my own accountant come on for a future episode to specifically talk about taxes for LLCs, so stay tuned for that. I also did a past episode in season 1, episode 19 with attorney Destiny Bounds, and she talks specifically about protecting your pursuits as a small business owner. And I also recommend listening to that episode. And one of the things she did recommend in that episode is setting up a team. So knowing who you want to have as your attorney, as your accountant, as a small business owner. And then lastly, one of the great benefits of having an LLC is that in the future, if you want to sell your business, it can make it really easy to transfer the ownership. So those are all the benefits of forming an LLC. Once you have decided to go this route, the next step that I would take is that you need to decide on your business's name. Now, if you've been wanting to have a business for a while, you probably already have a name in mind, but it is good to check that that name is not being used by anyone else. So an LLC name, it has to be unique in its state. You can pay an attorney to do a comprehensive search for you to make sure you're not using anyone else's trademark, Or if you cannot afford that, you can do your own search just using Google and social media channels to verify that you're not taking someone's name that is already being used. And if you're wanting to have a website, I would also check that the domain name is available. I think a lot of people don't think about that, and then they go to like take their business's domain name and someone else is already using. So definitely check that the domain name is available, and you can do that on websites like GoDaddy.com. Now, the third thing that I would recommend to do is to get an address for your business. And the reason that I recommend this as the third step is because you're going to need it for all of the documents that you fill out. So if you're a solopreneur, my guess is you're probably working out of your home, but I would not recommend using your home address as the main address for your business. And there's several reasons for this. So one, if you're renting or if you live in a neighborhood that has an HOA, it actually might not be allowed for you to do it. But second, your business address is public information and is published online. So for me personally, I just think this is a safety issue. Like, I don't want someone randomly showing up to where I live. So my recommendation is, if you do not have a physical office building, is to get a mailbox at a UPS store. For your business address, you cannot use a post office box because they only provide you with a PO box number. But with a mailbox at a UPS store, you'll actually get a real street address, and that's what is required for the paperwork. It's also really important to have an address for email. So if you don't have an email list already, I highly encourage you to build one. It is one of the most valuable things that you have when it comes to marketing. And that could be a whole other podcast episode. But for email, by federal law, you have to include a physical mailing address in each and every bulk email that you send out. So it is really important to have an address that you feel comfortable sharing with a lot of people, especially as your business grows. And where I'm located, it only costs $21 a month to have a UPS box. Okay, now that you have your address, we are actually going to get into the paperwork section of this. So you're going to need to file for articles of organization on your Secretary of State website. So you just want to make sure that you're on the actual legitimate Secretary of State website. And there is a fee to do this. For Colorado, the fee is $50, which I think is so reasonable. Most people can afford this and can just start their business. And you're also going to need to file a yearly periodic report to keep your LLC in good standing. So just remember that usually that happens the same time that you actually filed for your LLC. And in Colorado, that costs $10. The Articles of Organization form is pretty straightforward. It's going to ask for a registered agent name, and a registered agent is just a person or a business who is responsible for receiving legal documents and other official government communications on behalf of your business. So this could be an attorney that you hire, or it could just be yourself. So whoever your registered agent is, though, they do have to reside in the state where you're filing your Articles of Organization. Now, if you live in Arizona, New York, or Nebraska, you do have an additional step because they actually require you to publish a notice of formation in your local newspaper. I would just check with your state's Secretary of State website for the specific requirements in forming your LLC. And that goes for everyone listening because every state has different requirements. So I would just make sure you check your Secretary of State website to make sure you're not missing anything that is required by your state. And after you're done doing all of this, you should receive a confirmation of your LLC's formation in that state. Now, the next thing you need to do is I do recommend having an operating agreement. So some places this is required by law. In Colorado, it's not required. But an operating agreement is really important if you have multiple members of your LLC because it outlines the ownership and how the business will be managed. Now, a lot of solopreneurs, they skip this step, but it's also a good idea to have it because it can outline what would happen to your business if something happens to you. Okay, the next step you're going to want to do is you are going to want to apply for an EIN with the federal government. An EIN just stands for an employer identification number. Now, if you just Google, make sure that you avoid all of the sponsored sites that come up first. There's a lot of sites that try to appear as the irs.gov. It is completely free to apply for an EIN number. So if you're on a website that is trying to charge you, it is probably a scam. So you just want to make sure that you're on the legitimate irs.gov website. the business, obviously, it has to be located in the United States, and you also are going to need to have a social security number to apply for an EIN number. And oddly enough, even though it's a website, it does have hours of operation, which as of this recording are Monday to Friday from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you're not going to actually be able to apply for an EIN number on the weekends. And you do have to complete this form in one session. You're not able to save it. So just be aware of that. Like when you get started, like you're going to have to go all the way through. It is first going to ask you to identify what you're setting up, and then it's going to want you to authenticate it, give addresses, details, and then finally just complete it. So it's going to ask you what type of legal structure you want to establish, and you've already decided that you want to establish an LLC. Then it's going to ask you how many members are in the LLC. And members, it just means owners. And then it's going to ask you what state it's located in, and then why are you requesting this? So you would just choose the option for starting a new business. You're going to go through the rest of the form, and then you'll get your EIN number, and then you're going to want to set up a business bank account. It is really important to separate your personal finances from your business finances, again, for liability reasons. And I remember when I first went to set up my business bank account, I thought it was going to be a really quick and easy process. I could just go in and out in 5 minutes, but it actually does take some time. You're going to want to make sure that you bring all of the correct documents with you, and that includes the Articles of Organization form from the Secretary of State. It's going to be the letter with your EIN number from the IRS Gov, and sometimes the bank will also ask for a signed letter or operating agreement that states that you have 100% ownership of the business. If you do not have 100% ownership, you're going to need to go to the bank with all of the other parties that are involved. The other thing to know is most banks do require a minimum deposit for opening a checking account. So for my bank, that's $100. And I also recommend once that you've set up a business bank account, that you also set up a business PayPal account. That was a lot of information that I shared in this podcast. Also, depending on what your business is exactly, you might need to apply for certain permits and licenses in your area. If you want to have a checklist of all of this information, I have created a free digital download called How to Form an LLC, and it's available at my website at yourcreativeforce.com, and that's all spelled out. And I'm also going to put a link to that in the show description. And if you went through this entire process and started your business, I would love to know. Please leave a comment or send me a DM on Instagram at Sharon Stark. And congratulations on starting your business and going after your dreams. I'll leave you with this quote from Walt Disney. All of your dreams can come true if you have the courage to pursue them. Hey friend, if you've been enjoying this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you wrote a review. If you're listening from Apple Podcasts, you can scroll down to ratings and review and click on write a review to leave one. So many of you have shared kind words with me, and it would mean so much to me if others could see them. Also, if you feel like this podcast could bless someone you know, please share it with them. Thank you so much. The show notes for today's episode are available on my blog at yourcreativeforce.com, as well as other resources and inspiration to go after your dreams.